This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
How's it going, guys? White Rabbit here. Let's talk about the red and the blue symbolism. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, this is the perfect video for you. Red and blue symbolism is something that many occult researchers are familiar with. It is primarily related back to Luciferianism and in particular the cult group Masonry. Many researchers occasionally refer to the red and the blue dichotomy, but few actually talk about what those colors actually represent. Today, I'd like to explain that to you a little better and a little clearer, and hopefully, by the end of this, it'll start to make a little more sense. Just like anything, when it comes to the occult and we have different symbolism which represents different things, color too plays into that and a large role into that. So if we better understand these colors and what they each represent, it will be far easier to break down some of their symbolism and add an extra layer of understanding. So the red and the blue, where does that come from? Well, in many Luciferian cults, such as Freemasonry, they subscribe to the notion of the red and the blue pillars. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the pillars in Freemasonry, but did you know that one of them is red and one of them is blue? An excellent example of this creeping in to subliminal messages planted in media is seen in the movie The Matrix, when Morpheus offers Neo the choice between the red and the blue pill. This comes directly from Masonic teaching and has everything to do with the occult, and it has extreme importance and implications. So what does the blue and the red mean? Well, before we get into that, where does it come from? Just like anything that has to do with the occult, and particularly Lucifer, these are ideas that are taken and spun from the Bible. And most of these occult views can be tracked down and represented at one point or another in the Bible. Now, what does the Bible say about red and blue, as the theme appears several other times all throughout the Bible? Well, on the one hand, you have the color red. Red represents Esau, aka Edom, and blue represents Jacob, aka Israel. And just like you have duality as a theme, along with the black and white and the gold and silver, the red and blue is almost more representative of the Hegelian dialect, where you have one force combating the other, when in reality the end result is the ultimate outcome. And you can see this all throughout occult teachings and their New World Order plans. We can also look at it from the perspective of Cain and Abel. Remember the story in the Bible where Cain killed his brother Abel? Well, Cain represents red, and Abel represents blue. Red represents death and destruction. It also represents human nature, or the flesh. Blue represents the healing power of God, or the Word. Now, to take it one step further, especially in terms of the occult and ritual magic, red has the association with masculine energy. Red is the father, the color of will. Red is action and activity of command. Red is radiating an outward force. It is fiery and explosive by nature. Then if we look at the color blue, from a ritualistic magic perspective, it is associated with feminine energy. It is the mother, the color of reflection and inner emotion, secrecy, nurturing, creation, and formation. Blue is the color of lakes, the ocean, and the sky, and blue is positive and accepting by nature. So we can see how the ritualistic magic interpretation of these two colors is very eerily similar to the perspective given in the Bible. And like I said, these two colors have everything to do with the red and the blue pillars in Freemasonry. But, as is the case with Freemasonry, we have another color, and we have another pillar. Now, sometimes it is referred to as the middle pillar or the 13th pillar. Sometimes it's referred to as Jacob's ladder, or other times the stairway to heaven. Whatever you want to call it, it is symbolic of a mechanism or an entity which enables one to transcend to the next dimension. It is represented by the color yellow. And yellow, to the occult, to Luciferians, is Lucifer. It is their god, or at least a representation of their god. However, and this is where things get a little confusing, at times there's a slightly different perspective on this, and that is that the mechanism and the entity are two separate things. This would play into account if you think of the Antichrist versus actually Satan, similarly to God the Father and God the Son. In this case, instead of looking at the color yellow, we'd be looking at the color purple. And the easiest way that I could explain this to you is simply by looking at the three primary colors. Yes, folks, it's really that basic. When we see the three primary colors laid out in this fashion, it makes it very easy to explain these occultic beliefs. On the bottom left, you have the color red, representing death and destruction, as well as human nature and masculine energy. Whereas on the right, bottom left, you have the color blue, representing the feminine energy, or the word, or the spirit. When these two colors combine, they create a new color, the color purple. The color purple can represent a whole nother range to the occult. In ritualistic magic, for example, purple represents sickness, disease, putrefaction, and corruption. Purple is futility and impotent rage. Folks, when you look at a depiction of Baphomet, what is Baphomet? Baphomet is a hermaphrodite. It is the red and the blue coming together, the masculine and the feminine energy combining into one. This purple is a representation, in a sense, to the Antichrist, at least on a very basic level. When we see the color yellow in combination with this diagram, we can see how it can, in a sense, stand on its own. It is another primary color. But when combined with the purple, or this magenta color, we get black. And that embodies the physical nature of the Antichrist with the spiritual nature of Satan, creating essentially the apocalypse, the perfect storm, if you will. Now, this is where things get a little confusing. Just like with anything that has to do with the occult, there are many different layers and interpretations to these ideas. When we're talking about the primary colors, for example, we think of red, blue, and yellow, but that is the primary colors in a subtractive format. Basically, that's what we would expect to get if we were painting and mixing colors. But another way that you can look at the primary colors is through the additive sense. And that has to do when we're talking about sources of light. I'm sure many of you who are really into computers and maybe some Photoshop and things like that may have noticed that when you're custom creating your own colors, you control off of RGB, which stands for red, green, blue. And that is how you control and create custom colors. Because it has the red and the blue, but it also, instead of the yellow, applies green to create essentially the same idea. It's basically how to mix and create different colors using light as opposed to using paint, is the easiest way to describe it. And for whatever reason it works differently. I'm not going to get into all that in this video. Just Google it if you're interested. But I bring it up for this reason. Some occult groups teach, instead of yellow representing Lucifer or whatever god they worship, green represents Lucifer. And it's not too uncommon. And it makes sense that it wouldn't be too uncommon if you think of it in terms of Luciferianism is the pursuit of the light. So it would only make sense that their color representation comes from a light-based source. So when you hear people talk about green representing Lucifer, it's not that they're wrong, it's that they're consulting a varying occult belief, if that makes sense. And it's like that with everything when it comes to these topics, guys. Not every occult group or Luciferian group or magic group or Wiccan group, they don't all agree on the same fundamentals as one another. And it makes it very confusing at times, but when you really dig and you come to something like this, you begin to realize why and how it all still fits together. So there you go, guys. Hopefully this video didn't give you more questions than answers. I probably could have gone off on a whole bunch of different tangents there and made this video out to be an hour-long video, but originally I set out to only make it a 5-minute video, so the fact that it turned out to be only 12 to 14 minutes is pretty good in my book. Go ahead and give me a like, guys, because how many people do you know that can go on for 12 minutes just talking about the primary colors? Anyway. Alright, guys, there you go. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Thanks, and God bless.